Okay, this video is probably going to piss off a lot of people, but sometimes the truth hurts. I'm going to talk today about the truly shoddy reporting that has been going on in this election from supposedly reputable news sites. And I'm doing this because I'm tired of people just going, oh, the mainstream media, it's corrupt. I don't read that anymore. Well, the problem is that people are using Google search to fact check. And here's the problem with fact checking with Google search. Google just sends you to websites that have metadata that logs on Google. Google does not weight the quality of the information. So you don't know, unless you understand the various political affiliations and standards and practices of news organizations, then you don't know whether the information you're reading is reliable. And it's gotten so bad at this point that various sections of the New York Times are more and less reliable. Their foreign bureau is still one of the best in the world. It's actually one of the only remaining ones in the world. But their op-ed section, you fill out a form, you submit your article, and they go through and decide whether they're going to take it. It's completely different. And so not even the New York Times is a brand of quality anymore. And some people may have seen that John Oliver bit about the decline of newspapers. And so I want to start with the article that you see it up here, that started this whole down the rabbit hole journey for me. And then I'm going to show you guys a very well constructed piece of journalism. And then I'm going to compare it to some of the other things about the major stories of this campaign and why there's real cause for concern, because major media outlets are not just getting it wrong. They're reporting smoke as fire. And before I begin, I'm using CNN a lot because there's no point in going through the Huffington Post or the Drudge Report or Fox News or MSNBC. These channels all have political bias. These websites all have political bias. Now, does that mean they can't get it right sometimes? No, absolutely not. But they all have a clear bias. There's no point in expecting them to be fair to all candidates. CNN at least has made the attempt to include Gary Johnson and Jill Stein in their coverage. And so it says to me they're trying. The problem is they can do a lot better. And here's our first example. You see the headline here, Melania Trump threatens to sue news outlets. This may say, oh, what's she doing now? Oh, they're going after the media again. No, what this story is about is a widely circulated story that started in a Slovenian gossip magazine, but was then repeated by the Daily Mail, Politico, among others, like reputable websites, that the modeling agency that represented her in Slovenia also doubled as an escort agency. And I can completely understand why someone in Melania Trump's situation would threaten to sue. You'll notice that they made note of the lawyer she hired. It's the same lawyer who represented Hulk Hogan in the defamation suit against Gawker. I guess it's a detail, but I go, when I see that in news lately, because a lot of media is very, very down on the whole Gawker decision. And I feel like that is the media's reaction to that ruling is, to me, a fear response and not a logical look at the situation. The National Enquirer gets sued all the time and they lose. If someone is running for office, things that speak to their character, things that speak to their ability to do the job, things that speak to their fitness for office are absolutely fair game. But I don't think that Melania Trump being potentially exploited by a modeling agency when she was younger fits that burden. She was the victim there. And they're making it a story about her as opposed to the story about this magazine, like this idea, ooh, she might have been a prostitute. If she was, then she signed up as a magazine looking to be a model and was pushed into that way of life. One way or the other, if she is not disclosing that herself, it is nobody's business to out her that way. She's clearly not doing it anymore. And she clearly wants to be seen for her modeling, not whatever she may or may not have had to do because she was exploited. People just lose all sense of perspective when it's a politician or a politician's spouse or sometimes even a politician's daughter. And one of the things that really sensitized me to this was when Bill Clinton was president. The hatred for the Clintons back then was so profound that people even went after their daughter Chelsea when she was a teenager. She was an underage girl and was being ridiculed on both late night talk shows and so-called news services. It was disgusting. But it's amazing how they always have a defense for it. Public's rights, it's the first family, blah, blah, blah. No, there are lines. And so here's a good reporting on a political issue. On social media, Trump staffers post racist memes and talk of religious war. Now, one would say, oh, this is clickbait, but sadly it's not. The title accurately reflects what is in the article. Now, what's good about this article is the bare minimum, and it shouldn't be the bare minimum, but the modern bare minimum for publishing this story is we found racist memes on the Twitter accounts of Trump staffers. But what they did here was, instead of just saying, Trump staff has racist memes, they actually went and checked other campaigns, including the Clinton campaign, to see whether this behavior was just sort of the landscape of social media, whether Clinton employees had similarly inflammatory content on their social media services. And they didn't. The closest they found was that one staffer said that Trump's style of speaking reminded him of a roommate who had taken too many shrooms. But that isn't the same as making fun of Mexicans or, making horrible statements about Muslim people. And so they actually compared and contrasted. They compared and contrasted between Trump's top officials and the rank and file field organizers. And they found that among Trump's top officials, those racist sentiments weren't there. But they also had a reason for why this might be happening. And the reason from this one field organizer, he said that, the people that are being hired by the Trump campaign are people with very little political experience because the Trump campaign got what was left after everybody was hired away other places. I guess they went to work for the RNC in general or local Senate races. They didn't exactly have their pick of employees. Now that's good journalism. They compared both sides. They contextualized the story within the scope of larger trends. They made it relevant. They made it fair. And fair does not necessarily mean balanced. You don't have to say bad things just because you said good things, but it is fair. And they actually, even though these things are shocking, it's not that the Trump campaign is deliberately hiring racists. They're just not hiring especially adept people. And so this is a well-reported article. Some people would say it's well-researched, but researched is something different. I hate it when people say it's a very well-researched article. How do you know? Have you checked my research? Have you gone and read the sources? Just because somebody has a lot of sources doesn't mean it's well-researched. It's good reporting. It's good news gathering. And so here's a comparison from something else. Speculations about candidates' health. Now, this is kind of silly because First of all, we know that there have been great presidents from Roosevelt to Kennedy to Reagan who all had illnesses. And they all managed to make their mark in the country despite that. I am really concerned about health stigma regarding these candidates speculating on their health. And of course, this started because some conspiracy websites took years-old photos of Hillary Clinton slipping on steps, and I think it was South Carolina, and decided to make it into a conspiracy theory, claiming that a flashlight on a Secret Service agent was a rapid injecting pod for diazepam, and so on and so on. And I've been really pissed off by this whole Hillary Clinton is having seizures thing, because first of all, they look nothing like seizures, and second of all, people with epilepsy have enough damn trouble finding and maintaining work because of the stigmas around that condition for members of the so-called media to make it worse for them, as long as you're not operating a car or working at high heights. Epilepsy does not stop you from doing your job, especially if it's well controlled with medication. So this idea that somebody is unfit for office because they may have seizures when, Hillary Clinton has probably not driven her own car in a very long time. Thanks, App Update, for making a noise. But, of course, we move on, and we have the Clinton Foundation. And this is where people are probably going to get mad. People are probably already mad at me for defending Melania Trump. But this is where people are going to get really mad at me. And I want to be clear from the beginning. This examination of the reporting on this is not a defense of Hillary Clinton. This is an examination on bad reporting, period. This story happens to have been uniquely poorly reported because it's been focused on this paradigm of asking questions instead of providing answers. It has been a story focused on optics instead of facts. And optics are important, but the role of a good journalist is to move beyond optics and look at what's really going on. And that is why the work of the reporters down in Boston that was featured in the movie Spotlight was so good, because they looked past the optics of the Catholic Church in Boston and looked at what was actually going on and actually got evidence before they started smearing people doing good work. Because the problem with going after an organization that does good community work is if it does shut down, if it is harmed, then people around the world and people in that neighborhood do suffer because they lose access to services. And one of the big things the Clinton Foundation provides is antiviral drugs to people in the developing world. That's AIDS drugs for people who aren't sure. This is among other things. They do clean water initiatives. They do initiatives that make things safer for girls in parts of the world where it isn't a great place to be a girl. They undeniably do good work around the world. And so making this into a negative should be done extremely cautiously. And I would feel the same way about a Trump charity. I was iffy about people going after the money he donated to veterans because he fudged the number. Was it in doubt that he'd given money to veterans and that it was a substantial amount of money? All right, so proceed with caution, because if it becomes too much trouble to give money to these initiatives, people stop giving. And I have found this out firsthand in numerous things that I have been a part of, that people started rumor campaigns and wrecked. And so organizations no longer were able to help the people they served because of unsubstantiated rumor that nobody checked out. This is a huge problem in the nonprofit sector. And the first thing you'll see, well, let me summarize this story for you. The idea is that people think that the Clinton Foundation was used by very rich foreign nationals to buy access to Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State. There is no evidence that a single favor was granted because of a donation to the Clinton Foundation. Some people will claim there is because of the poor reporting on this issue, but there isn't. You cannot do the things they claim Clinton has done out of the State Department alone. It has to come through multiple departments and there has to be consensus. So if she was pulling shenanigans with, say, a gas deal in the Ukraine, the Commerce Department would have put the kibosh on that unless you're also claiming the Commerce Department was corrupt. And what does the Commerce Department get out of this? Nothing. This entire story has been so poorly reported that it is inverted cause and effect. And the first mistake they tend to make is, you see the graphic on the screen here? That it says money went to the Clinton Foundation from countries? No, they were not donations, public taxpayer money from the government of these countries. They were donations from private citizens, wealthy private citizens who lived in these countries. So this would be the equivalent of Bill Gates giving a bunch of money to something and somebody saying America donated $50 million. No, America didn't do squat. Bill Gates donated it, right? And this is a huge mistake. They keep saying it's coming from these countries. Now, many donors are also politically involved. This does happen. And yes, there is a high rate of people who donated to the foundation who also had business dealings with Bill or Hillary. But it is just as likely, possibly more likely, considering the times Clinton has been in office, that they did business with the Clintons first, then donated because they knew them, liked them, and trusted them. Then they paid money for access. And if they already had access to the Clintons because of prior dealings, they don't need to buy their way in. They already had the access. They already had the contacts. They already had Huma Abedin on speed dial. This is absurd. This is absurd. But it's because they're looking for something to make it seem like they are providing balanced coverage. They are going at Hillary Clinton just as hard as Donald Trump. And this story has become bigger and bigger and bigger to the point that people are going on cable news services nightly and saying things that are patently false. There's a great thing about nonprofit organizations. They are heavily monitored. The Clinton Foundation has been accused of funneling huge amounts of money into the Clintons directly. Now, of course, it turned out the Clintons did not collect a salary. They took nothing personally. They even donated millions of their own money to the foundation. And so the people that want to keep this thing going, and at this point it is a conspiracy theory because there's no actual evidence. There are a couple emails asking for meetings. There are a couple of emails of meetings actually happening. But let me tell you guys, I have had plenty of meetings with people that either went nowhere, and sometimes I had no intention of them going anywhere. I was taking the meeting because I didn't want the person screaming that they wouldn't meet with me. You give them the chance. They may surprise you. This is standard business. You take the call, you do the meeting. It's just your time, right? But the Clinton Foundation has been watchdogged. See? Watchdog. There's even a picture of it. But this idea that an inordinate amount of the money going in went to overhead is false. You see it right here. 12% of the money coming into the Clinton Foundation went to overhead. That is standard. That is standard for a charity. People are like, why so high? Well, the more money a charity brings in, the more programs a charity has running, the more staff are required to administer and oversee those programs. That's why. So 12% is all right. Now, based on the money that the Clintons bring in, that's millions and millions and millions of dollars. And people have claimed that the Clintons have milked the travel expenses of the Clinton Foundation to maintain their lifestyle. Now, two things are wrong with that. One, Hillary Clinton would not have needed travel expenses when she was Secretary of State. The government handles that. Secondly, the Clintons released their tax returns. We know they're already millionaires. Why do they need more millions if they're already making millions? They made millions off speaking fees that everybody complained about anyway. If they were fleecing their charity to maintain a lifestyle, they wouldn't be making those speaking fees that got them in trouble. Their money came from speaking fees. They had no need to abuse their charity funding to do it. It just, in order for a theory to overcome common sense, you need evidence, and there isn't any. And that's why I claim this as a conspiracy. Now, that you'll also see another important number in a charity is the cost to raise number. You'll see it on the right here. Cost to raise $100. Now, this is very low. What cost to raise is the amount of advertising and the amount of fees, like event fees, food, drink, hospitality, travel, stuff like that, that you have to spend to raise $100. And this is the bane of charities everywhere, because in order to get big money, you usually have to spend big money. And so the expenses in a fundraiser can really eat into the amount of money actually going to the charity. It's a huge frustration. But the Clintons only spend $2 to raise $100, and that's because of their prior connections to very rich people. And you'll notice all this together gives the Clinton Foundation an A rating as a charity. So a charity that has had a lot of oversight and it got an A rating is treated as some sort of nefarious plot by an outlet like CNN on a daily basis without a single shred of actual evidence that this ever resulted in something, in an actual outcome. For people to think that getting a meeting with Hillary Clinton is some sort of nefarious plot really don't understand how the U.S. system works. And if you want to claim that the U.S. system is corrupt, you go right ahead. It absolutely is. But the thing that the article I showed you on the social media thing did, and they compared it to the behaviors of other people who did similar jobs. If you looked at any other Secretary of State, there are some people who can jump the line for various reasons. And then sometimes the ball gets dropped as well, and people can't get a meeting they deserve through official channels, and so they use personal connections. This is not just how government works, this is how business works. You sometimes have to do end runs around gatekeepers who are keeping the gate closed artificially. So let me show you a story that is much more serious, that hasn't been getting anywhere near the traction, because the accusation is that Hillary Clinton is using her presidential run and her State Department position for her own gain. Here's a compare and contrast. Campaign defends paying steep rent increase at Trump Tower. Donald Trump is using campaign funds to pay staff at Trump Towers, staff at Mar-a-Lago, staff at his businesses. He is renting space in his buildings. Now, he's not evicting tenants to do that. That would involve breaking a lease and he'd end up in court. So he is using space in his buildings and the money is coming from the campaign. Now, this we can prove because there are federal filings. They have to show where the money's going. This is not speculation. This is proof. And I'm going to scroll down to the bottom of this article. Federal records have shown that Trump has directed almost a fifth of his campaign cash to companies to which he is linked. Now, that's just one fifth of the money. Now, before the general election, that didn't matter because he was funding it all with his own money. If he wants to pump his own money into his businesses, that's his business. But now this is relevant because he is taking money from other people. He's getting money from the generic RNC fund. He's getting donors to fund his campaign. So all of a sudden, this is relevant, and this is a much more direct line than the Clinton Foundation. And I'm not saying people shouldn't question the Clinton Foundation. I'm saying you need a few answers before you run with the story. And the whole media has started to reflect Trump's tactic for disinformation. Many people are saying that's all CNN needs to run with the story. Many people are saying that the Clinton Foundation raises serious questions about Hillary Clinton's ethics and all that stuff. Give me proof. Give me proof before I form an opinion. Give me proof before you start trying to manipulate my viewpoint. And CNN's benefiting from this by showing that they are the only one who's willing to criticize both candidates. There is plenty to criticize Hillary Clinton for without going into conspiracies. The problem is people are sick of her emails. They're sick of hearing about it. Every time they do that, it doesn't affect her poll numbers, so they move on to something else. But this Clinton Foundation story has come out of the email scandal, which came out of millions and millions and millions of taxpayer dollars going into a Benghazi inquiry, multiple Benghazi inquiries that did not find any wrongdoing by the Secretary of State, by Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State. Now, if you want to worry about misappropriation of government funds, about abuse of government power, about politicians using their power to conduct their own affairs and feather their own nests, well, that's something to look at, isn't it? Abuse of congressional oversight committees. And considering Congress's job approval ratings, that is something I think that services like CNN should be taking a good hard look at.